Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. I'm Dr. Dan McCoy, Director of the J. Kemmer Wyoming Outdoor Recreation, Tourism, and Hospitality, or WORTH Institute at the University of Wyoming. And thank you all so much for joining us. Today, we're reviewing the first comprehensive outdoor business needs assessment ever conducted for the state of Wyoming. Outdoor recreation contributed 2.3 billion to Wyoming's GDP in 2024, 4.5% of the state's total GDP, and employs more than 16,500 people. Yet until now, we've never had a data-driven picture of who these businesses are, what they're up against, and what they need to grow. This report was developed in partnership with Founded Outdoors, with research contributions from students in our outdoor recreation and tourism management capstone class you'll hear from shortly. It draws on a survey of 111 Wyoming outdoor recreation businesses and in-depth interviews with 19 business owners across 18 of our 23 counties. So a little housekeeping as we get started here. The webinar is being recorded, and the recording and report link will be shared. The report link will be shared here shortly in the chat. Attendees are muted, so do please consider submitting questions anytime throughout the webinar using the Q&A feature, and we'll get to as many of those as we can at the end. So to walk us through the findings, I'm pleased to introduce our report authors from Founded Outdoors, En-Hao Lee and Katie Doherty. Thank you both for joining us, and I'm going to turn the webinar over to you all.
Thank you so much, Dan. Hi, everyone. I'm Katie. I'm the co-founder of Founded Outdoors. I'm here with my business partner, En-Hao. Thank you so much, Dan and the Worth Institute, for the opportunity to partner on this project. We learned a great deal from you and from the University of Wyoming students whom we worked with about the dynamics that are impacting the outdoor industry in the state. We also want to thank the business owners who we had the opportunity to talk with and learn from through our surveys and interviews. We were very energized and inspired by your stories. Um, so to tell you about Founded Outdoors, at Founded Outdoors, we believe that outdoor businesses are really important to the fabric of their communities for the health and wellness of their residents, for building local outdoor culture and quality of life, for economic development. And so that's why it's our mission to help outdoor business owners thrive. And the way that we do that is first, we have a free online community for outdoor business owners from across the country. The real goal of that community is peer-to-peer knowledge sharing. There is not much that's more valuable than a group of business owners getting together and learning from one another. We support all different kinds of business owners in that community, from physical products to guides and other types of experiences, to CPG and digital apps. In addition to our community, we also work with state outdoor business alliances, state outdoor recreation offices, economic development groups, and universities to support outdoor businesses in their regions. And typically, our partnerships take the form of doing business needs assessment and opportunity reports, like the one that we'll talk through today, where we do interviews and surveys with local business owners to better understand their challenges, the current support landscape, and where there are gaps, and then to make recommendations on how to better support outdoor businesses in that region. In addition, we also do business owner training, where we do workshops on important business building topics like marketing and finances, as well as multi-month long accelerator programs to help businesses get started, launch, and sell to their first customers, or to modernize, grow, and scale. I am really excited for us to share our learnings from this report with you. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to En-Hao.
Thanks, Katie. Hi, everyone. I am Katie's co-founder, En-Hao. As Dan spoke about this survey, I am going to spend the next about 15 minutes giving you some of the highlights from our learnings in this survey. But it is a very long survey, so please, take the time to go and read through the 100 pages of the survey. I'm not going to be going through all of it today. But we learned a lot from both our surveys and interviews. So, starting with just a little bit of background on who participated in the survey, Dan alluded to the fact that we surveyed 111 businesses. Of the 23 Wyoming counties, 18 were represented in the data. And with the help of our student team, we divided the state into three regions. You can see here we grouped the two larger counties that's close to Teton and Yellowstone National Park into the Gateway region. And then the rest of the state was grouped to west and east, and you can see delineated here. And so some of the analysis that we do by region is done so in this way. And it was designed to both include the cultural and outdoor differences of the different regions, but also to give us enough data sample from each region for there to be more statistical significance as we look at the data. Um, just in terms of looking at the difference between how the businesses are split, as you can see in the survey, we got a relatively even split between the three regions. In the interviews, we did lean a little bit more heavily towards gateway businesses and a little bit less in the West, but about the same weighing for businesses in eastern Wyoming. In terms of the business types, the most heavily represented group were guides. One thing I do want to note is that businesses were allowed to select more than one business type. And in fact, almost half of the businesses surveyed did select more than one business type, showing the importance of diversification, which is a through line that you're going to hear as we talk, how important it is to have different business types. The second and third most represented were retailers and lodging. And lodging includes everything from dude ranches to campgrounds. There were also rentals, venues, manufacturers, the business types that were less represented. It was just harder for us to delve deeper into those business types as there weren't as many businesses when we were looking at segment analysis. In terms of activities represented, the most represented was fishing at almost 43%, closely followed by hunting, followed by hiking, and then the next main group is equestrian and camping. And so you can see that a lot of different Wyoming outdoor activities are represented. Snow sports, I will say, are a little bit lower down here with 15. We didn't do that much activity-based analysis, but this is just to show you just the breadth of what was included in the survey in the 111 results. In terms of the size of the business, we focused on small businesses for this survey, but we did have a good range of what size these businesses were. These were the main revenue bands that we looked at. We had about 21, technically, I guess 24 businesses that made less than $100,000 a year. So these are very small businesses. The largest range was from the 100K to 500K, 500,000 range. And we ended up clustering actually the 500,000 to 5 million into a larger group. And we had a few that were more than 5 million, some are much larger businesses. Another thing to really note, we didn't necessarily expect this, but this really colors how we look at the results, which is that this was a deeply, deeply experienced group of businesses. 81 businesses, or 73%, have been operating for more than 10 years. And only 8 of the business surveyed have been operating for less than 3 years. So this is incredibly skewed towards experienced businesses. And I think I do want to say that the lack of new businesses might be to some degree due to our sampling and just the survey bias. But it is also worth looking into whether or not there should be or could be more support for new businesses and why there are just so few new businesses in this list. Um, so We asked how businesses did in the year 2025. I know that we're halfway through 2026, but it's just kind of helpful to see what happened last year and to check in terms of how you felt like your business went and your sector. Overall, the Gateway region next to the parks did really well in 2025. You see the green here are the businesses that are up, the light green here are the ones that are down, and then the lightest green are the ones that have held steady. And so here, Gateway has done really well. The East seems to have held steady, about similar numbers up and down. The West, though, seems to have taken the hardest hit, and a lot more businesses that had a down year in 2025 compared to 2024. And we suspect that this was due to a concentration of smaller businesses that were more heavily represented in the West, who are more impacted by things like weather, and just lack of infrastructure. We also looked at, in looking at the different business types and their performance, lodging and rental did really well. I will just say directionally, there's not enough information on rental, not enough of a sample set on venue infrastructure and manufacturing. So just look at it this purely directionally. But I do want to highlight that retailers were very stressed in 2025, with 41% reporting a down year. We believe that this was driven due to a combination, not just one challenge that they were hit by, challenges from weather, challenges from tariff pressures, and just a very long-term trend of ongoing competition from online retailers. But overall, as you can see, 2025 was a relatively steady year, about similar numbers of business having an up year as down and going relatively steady. So in looking at what kind of challenges the businesses faced, we asked the questions in two ways. One was just tell us all of your challenges, and this is the result of what they told us. And so the most mentioned challenges were seasonality and weather, followed by marketing, followed by burnout and hiring and competition and regulation. So this is like name as many challenges that you face currently, as possible. And risk management, I'll just mention here, is a combination of insurance and just having to manage liability like lawsuits and stuff. We also asked them to cite their top challenge. So, what is the one thing that is bothering you the most? And it was important to show that seasonality kind of became less important, and same thing with weather to a certain degree, because people, I think a lot of outdoor businesses recognize that that is a natural part of being an outdoor business. And the most painful thing now for folks is hiring. Probably not surprising to a lot of folks here. And I'm going to go a little bit deeper into each of these challenges and what we heard in the interviews. But marketing is still very high, and regulations, as you can see here, is quite high. So we're going to double click on a few of those. In terms of our interviews, what is showed with Workforce Challenge is that they felt like outdoor wages do not match the cost of living pressures. And this also includes a limit of shortage of housing in remote and high cost areas. Seasonal employees are really difficult to retain, and it's also difficult to find skilled and reliable laborers. And it's the cost of training and certifying a seasonal staff. So all the issues coming with a typically seasonal business. And then in line with the challenge of the seasonal workforce, seasonality and weather and climate was also a challenge, having to deal with wildfires, droughts, fluctuating water temperature, the snowpack dependency that creates a huge risk for a lot of businesses, flooding in Yellowstone, just generally the potential shortening of revenue window when these things happen for businesses and being at the mercy of nature. Marketing challenges was also high, and when we asked what kind of marketing challenges, in the survey, the specific marketing umbrella is very huge, but specifically asking the challenges were around accessing new customers. And here, when we asked in interviews what the marketing challenges were, they talked about how advertising is very expensive. It's really hard for them to understand the return on investments when they do paid advertising, or they're trying to market to a very small population. and just not having enough time if they're not doing paid marketing to do social media, content creation. They're probably a very small team. And especially for new businesses, having a lot of challenge in getting visibility. The other area that we asked about, and that was a main pain point, was around regulatory permitting and policy. So we had a specific question around what kind of regulatory barriers folks faced. And while that's not specifically a bar here, I would just say that 73% of the respondents said they experienced some type of regulatory barrier. So one of these answered to one of these questions. And 29% of them had questions around permitting, licensing, and compliance. And so this was by no means a small problem. When we were talking to them in interviews, they expressed a lot of frustration that the outdoor industries feels often deprioritized compared to other industries in terms of land use, in terms of permitting, in terms of just economic development discussion. And respondents really identified a need for stronger communication with the county commissioners, with the Bureau of Land Management, and other public land agencies around outdoor business and recreation issues. And so you can see a list here, and I get that some of these issues are on a state level, local level, county level, and also on a federal level. So not everything that folks here are able to potentially influence, but just showing you what our business owners are feeling. Um, in terms of business types, we do see a little bit of variability. For example, here, retailers really their biggest pain point is around competition, but that's not as high, at least in the survey, from others. But when we were speaking to them in interviews, competition did turn up as a recurring challenge, even not just for retailers. Business described just increased competition from to access customers, to access workforce, to access lease and permit, land access, recreation assets. So while it wasn't ranked highly here for guiding and lodging other businesses, it did seem quite frustrating. The other thing we heard was just overall rising operating costs, whether it was wages, insurance, lease, healthcare, fuel, everything was going higher while revenue in the business was not keeping up. Um, and so, in terms of support, what kind of support are these businesses getting? Um, we asked them what kind of support do they have access to, and of the 109 respondents who answered this question, 45 or 41%, about, I'll just say, not aware, aware, and limited connection and limited value. So these three accounted for 2/3 of the businesses, and only 1/3 of the businesses found the resources, one in three, to be somewhat or very impactful. So there's really a rich opportunity here to create more support for outdoor businesses. And I would even say that you see here with the limited connection, limited usefulness. That there are a lot of folks going for resources and trying to get resources, but just found it to have not had much impact. And so I think folks are looking for and are seeking support. And here's just a list of organizations that they have found to have been helpful. Officer tourism is very high. I think there's opportunity for newer organizations like Wyorba to rank higher on this list in the future as more knowledge about its existence is spread. We asked them what kind of specific expertise they wanted, and marketing really dominated here. And so if you just read down this list, the first six, seven are all marketing related. So social media, paid ads, SEO and AI visibility, websites, email, specifically here, email marketing, branding, even sales can be connected to marketing. The first one, the highest non-marketing topic, expertise they want access to is hiring, which is not surprising for all of us, given how painful of a thing hiring is for folks. There are some around finance, like bookkeeping, cash flow, financial planning is also here. But you can also see regulations, access to regulatory experts. We'll talk a little bit more about that. In terms of what businesses tell us in interviews that they want access to, they want to build better pathways towards talent and the outdoor industry, internship programs. They want access to reliable hiring and staffing support, maybe some kind of incentivizing talent recruitment with wage support, and even understanding what doing an industry-wide, statewide wage study. Just, better training and resources for small businesses around their hiring. Specifically around policy, we asked them what can be helpful, both in surveys and interviews. In the survey, the policy alerts, just alerts that's relevant for their sector, for their location. Almost 40% of businesses respondents said that that would be useful. They also like the idea of having just plain language summaries of how of regulations and how it might impact them. They also wanted access to experts. About 30% would love to have access to some kind of policy expert or advisor, and followed by collective voice and their desire to do more advocacy work, along with permitting guidance. In terms of what we heard in interviews, we heard that they wanted more long-term stability around recreation permits. They wanted more established, consistent residency standards across Wyoming. They wanted to be able to ensure more collective voice, local voice to influence public land management specifically, and more uh, sustainable use and more management of commercial recreation pressures and sustainable use. And so, in terms of folks who are not interested, I would say 21% said they were not interested in any kind of policy support, and 14% said they already have sufficient. But there is a lot of room here to support folks around policy, permitting, and advocacy. With that, I'll hand it over to you, Katie.
Thank you, Enhao, my co-founder and our resident statistician. So now we're going to make some recommendations based on our learnings from this report. So first, as Enhao mentioned, about 2/3 of responding businesses were unaware of existing business support resources, didn't use them, or felt the resources they accessed had limited impact on their businesses. This highlights first an opportunity to better communicate the value of existing programs by explicitly connecting those opportunities to challenges that outdoor businesses face. So, for example, if you work at a small business development center and you're doing a workshop on budgeting and financial projections, in the promotion, can you tie that workshop to helping outdoor businesses navigate seasonality or weather disruptions? So, tying the topic to the high priorities of outdoor businesses. More importantly, we see an opportunity to expand outdoor specific programming to increase the relevance and drive more engagement and drive value for outdoor businesses. And this is especially important for new outdoor businesses. Number two, uh, hiring was the most frequently chosen top business challenge. And we recommend working to address workforce constraints, especially around building a talent pipeline and seasonal workforce, and working on housing access. Of course, housing access is a more complicated issue, and it's one that certainly deserves a lot of investment and focus. In the short term, though, we recommend increasing the promotion of the Wyourba job board across the Mountain West, growing partnerships with colleges and universities to strengthen the workforce pipeline, and developing regional certification programs, for example, WWOOFer, to reduce costs of training for businesses. So rather than them having to host the training individually, a number of businesses can host it together and reduce those costs. Number three, marketing was a highly mentioned top challenge and an area that was with a high desire for expertise. So we recommend meeting that desire and providing more expertise. One thing that is a low-hanging fruit is to create a resource that highlights the type of marketing support that is already available in the state to make it easier to find and access. We also recommend providing more localized PR support, especially for new businesses, enabling peer learning and co-marketing opportunities, and offering workshops on social media, paid ads, email marketing, customer acquisition, website optimization, SEO, brand, AI marketing, all tailored specifically to outdoor businesses serving outdoor consumers. Number four, we heard acute frustration from business owners about the perception of being deprioritized in regards to land access and permitting decisions compared to other industries. Our recommendation is to continue to support and expand statewide outdoor recreation advocacy through organizations like WIORBA, to also align the industry around favorable policies and educate and empower business owners to get involved in the legislative process, including by alerting them to policies that are being considered that impact them, and also continue to educate lawmakers on the economic impact of the outdoor industry and outdoor recreation in the state. Number five, equip outdoor business owners to navigate uncertainty, whether that be uncertainty because of weather or seasonal fluctuations or rising costs, and to help them grow sustainably through workshops on financial planning and diversifying their revenue streams. Number six, because many of the operators that we talked to, and how mentioned, you saw that graph where so many of the businesses that we talked to have been in business for more than 10 years, because they're in the later stages of their careers, we recommend providing guidance on succession. We think that's going to be very important. And we recommend a deliberate effort to connect these businesses that are looking to sell these business owners that are looking to sell their businesses with local buyers, in order to keep businesses locally owned and ensure that the economic benefits stay within the community. And last but not least, number seven, several owners of guiding businesses pointing to growing congestion on public lands and heavily used recreation areas. So as visitation continues to grow, we know Wyoming continues to become more popular. We recommend continuing to invest in outdoor recreation infrastructure and to strengthen coordination among businesses and tourism agencies, as well as to expand access to education on responsible recreation. Okay, that's all for the entire report. I know that Dan has published that, and I'm not sure if you're going to share a link to that in the chat. But we do have much more data, more key takeaways, more recommendations. So do check out that report. And thanks very much, everybody, and thank you, Dan.
Great. Thank you, Katie, and Hal. Really appreciate the insights from the report. Now I'd like to turn it over to, I think one thing that really kind of makes this special is that University of Wyoming students had the opportunity to help construct this and contribute to it. And Carter Watsabaugh is one of our students, recent graduates in the Outdoor Recreation and Tourism Management capstone, who contributed to this. So Carter, if you'd like to, I'd love to have you share a few words about your team's role in data collection and your insights from this report. Carter, are you there? I think you're on mute. There you go.
Sorry about that. Can you hear me okay now?
Yep.
All right. Just a little bit about me. I'm a sixth generation Wyoming local, so I have a lot of personal connection to this state. And when Dan approached me with this project about how we can better support these outdoor recreation businesses, which is something I've lived and breathed my entire life here in the state, I was really excited to be a part of this project. The first thing that we did as students was do some background research into this topic. So we tried to figure out what existing data there was as far as what these businesses look like, how many there are, and what we saw was there really isn't much data here in the state of Wyoming. That really surprised us and spurred our desire to really put a lot of effort into this project to give us a good baseline moving forward. What we did was we started with building a statewide outdoor business directory. So we just put many, many hours into scavenging the internet. We used a couple AI resources as well to help get contact info for these outdoor businesses. And what we were able to do was create a directory of over 500 businesses. We then did some outreach to these businesses after working with Founded Outdoors to create the survey. And one of our goals as Wyoming locals was to give a little bit more of a Wyoming insight into this survey. So what Wyoming specific issues should be asked about that are different than other states. And Founded Outdoors was able to incorporate a little bit of that into it. After doing some outreach, we, as students, did some more targeted stakeholder interviews. These were longer interviews, anywhere from 30 to 45 minutes, that went really in depth of different sectors and stakeholders, anywhere from business owners to like the I worked with Founded Out or sorry. I worked with a already existing outdoor collaborative in Maine called Maine Outdoor Brands and got some really good insights from them. And this was all then put into our project where we were able to analyze some of our responses and figure out one thing was our county distribution that was aforementioned of how we can separate the Park and Teton counties from the rest of the state since as we know, those are very different, and part of our Wyoming Insight, we thought that that was important to point out. And we were able to identify the key themes that we had throughout this, which was all findings that we had in the report. As students, we then had the opportunity to present our research at the Wyoming Outdoor Recreation Summit in Saratoga, Wyoming, which was an amazing opportunity. We connected with a lot of business leaders, and we also had the privilege to present to the entire Wyoming Business Council. The Wyoming Business Council hasn't been very involved in the outdoor recreation sector as far as support, and they were really interested in hearing this because it's something that they want to get more involved in. And it was just something that was really amazing to see as students of how much industry engagement there was and how much people were passionate about this. Business owners overall were really excited that we were doing this research and really being able to see that the us as younger generation and like the future of Wyoming are really passionate about this was great. Um, and then, yeah, I had a great time with this project, and personally, I'm really hoping that it's going to keep moving forward and start this as a really good baseline for supporting these different sectors of the Wyoming outdoor recreation businesses.
Great. Thanks so much, Carter. I really appreciate that. And also thanks to your classmates as well.
Yep.
Now I'd like to bring in our panel, the people living these findings every day. Joining us are Representative Andrew Byron of the Wyoming House of Representatives and Chair of the Travel, Recreation, Wildlife, and Cultural Resources Committee. Lindsay Olson, owner of Atmosphere Mountain Works. Cheyenne Streck, Executive Director of the Wyoming Outdoor Recreation Business Alliance. Mike Dawes, owner of West Bank Anglers. And Dustin Stetler, President of the the Wyoming Outfitters and Guides Association and owner of Stetter Outfitters. So welcome to all of you. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen so hopefully we can see all of you here. If you guys want to go ahead and unmute your mics and screens, that'd be great. Awesome. So I'm going to start out with the first question for you. Each of you brings a very different vantage point, retail, manufacturing, guiding and outfitting, each industry advocacy and policy. So what stood out to you about this report? And if it's okay, we'll start in the order in which I introduced you. So Representative Byron.
Thank you, Dan. Are you good with audio? Can we hear me?
Yeah.
Great. I really appreciate that report, the in-depth work that was done by everyone involved. I think that as somebody that works in policy and formerly worked in the industry, guiding industry, I really was surprised to see the 28% number that said they don't have any regulatory barriers. I think that's something we're always working on as a state policy is how can we reduce barriers to drive economic growth, especially in the outdoor tourism recreation space. So I'd say that stood out. I did like at the end how the stuff got tied back into some of the policy stuff during the summary and how we can educate lawmakers. So I'd say those two things. And I also was really pleased with how the group separated the different regions. I think that's something that we continue to talk about at the policy at the state house level and the Travel, Recreation, Wildlife, Cultural Resources Committee on where can we capture some of these dollars and people participating in this space that is not in Northwest Wyoming.
Great. Lindsay.
Well, I guess it's not, I mean, it's nice that it's not just my own thinking that Wyoming's not a bubble anymore. I mean, it's now in writing, and so that the levels of competition are increased, not only just because of on access to online stuff, and then, but our big box stores. I'm here in Laramie, and everyone, or not everyone, but a lot of people have draws to go down to Fort Collins. And I think a lot of business owners have that same feeling. So our goal is to just, adapt, as they said, the diversification of everyone having multiple different, whether they're just a outfitter, they also do some retail also. For us, we do some retail and manufacturing. That's kind of an important lesson that I think was learned from maybe years, as the report pointed out, but maybe just from COVID and stuff, and being able to swing at whatever the challenges are that we need. And I wonder if some of the lack of new businesses is also because of that fear of competition and challenges that we experience.
Interesting. Yeah. Thanks, Lindsay. Cheyenne.
Hi, everybody. Yeah, it was an interesting study because I'd already been going around talking to businesses, contacting businesses around the state, and then also my own involvement with business in Sublette County. And I think this data just backed up what I'm hearing from everybody. There's a lot of need for support and marketing and getting their names out there across the state, if not across the nation. And then there's just frustration with housing and finding adequate employees through a season, because a lot of the Wyoming businesses operate on seasonal. So it was good to see that that was included in the report and reflected what I've been hearing. And the other major thing that I've noticed with the report that aligns with what I'm seeing is that policy is important to everybody, but they don't feel like they have adequate access to really know what's going on. A lot of it mentioned is just busyness through the seasons, and they don't have time to really sit down and look through that. So I do think that's somewhere where businesses can be supported across the state, is being involved in that and getting easy information that they can understand and decide where they want to stand with that, or what support they need to understand policies and procedures happening.
Mike, there were a lot of businesses that were in the kind of fishing space, and be really curious to hear your insights as well.
We're dealing with that with a couple of my businesses up here as well.
Yeah,
It's been interesting.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. And unfortunately, I don't think my takeaways have anything to do with really the fishing business, but it's interesting. I think Carter said it, right? Like they were out looking for the data, and there wasn't any, and now there is some. So I think that's kind of, my takeaway was the report was very helpful in the sense of like, stop looking at the immediate region. There's no reason that Wyoming can't lead the country in terms of outdoor recreation. I think that the issue lies in the inconsistencies at the foundational level at the state, and I feel like this is a great start in terms of collecting data and then analyzing the inconsistencies at the foundational level. I mean, if we look at, fishing versus hunting versus mountain biking, right, we're going to find some wild variances. And I think this is a great start to maybe, look at Wyoming as a whole and making sure that the foundational level is on an equal playing field, and then building from there. But thank you, everyone, because this is the starting point. So appreciate it.
Great. Thanks, Mike. Dustin, any thoughts?
I would like to open just by saying thank you to everyone who put so much work into this, because it is fascinating. I don't think it's a surprise to many people. what they found as far as business challenges. One thing that I would touch on is as we look at why are there fewer new businesses, one of those reasons is because as these smaller businesses continue to struggle with overhead, rising costs, et cetera, they're bought by bigger businesses that can afford, uh, to make up for that in order to acquire those businesses. And so we see it a lot, for example, in the Du Bois area, and you see it across the state with regard to outfitting businesses, whether that's summer pack trips or hunting or whatever. Where we used to have in this just around Du Bois, we would have 25 licensed outfitters. There are now like 11 or
Hmm.
7 because not because there are fewer permits, but because those permits have been bought over time. For example, we hold 2, a variety of people hold more than 1 permit. They just kind of get swallowed up by bigger fish. So, I mean, that's something that you will see is why there are fewer new businesses. But I think it's fascinating what the work that's been done. I also think, one of my key takeaways is the talent and hiring challenges that we face across the board. I don't think it matters what industry, or not in industry, but which branch of the industry you're in. That is the hardest thing to overcome. For how do you hire for someone for 6 months in one of these communities that everybody wants to live in? There's no housing, there's no way to afford housing, et cetera. So, and the only other thing I'd like to touch on is, and one thing I'd like to ask the rest of the panel is, we see in our business, so we operate a wilderness camp in the Winds. And one of the things that we have noticed over the years is we struggle with clients who want to have connectivity all the time. And so we do have a Starlink, but we don't have power. So we run it off battery and it's for emergency use only. And the amount of people who say, well, I'd love to come to your camp, but I just can't because I need to be able to, check my Facebook or whatever it is. So that's just another thing. But I would like to thank everybody for doing the work they've done, and strongly urge you to continue doing it. So thank you.
Great. Thanks, Dustin. And yeah, you kind of stole my thunder on the second question here, but it's totally fine. That's a really good takeaway from this report, and wondering if other members here, if we can maybe go in reverse order, if you guys could share 1 or 2 takeaways that you have from this. Mike, we'll maybe start with you, then go in reverse order.
I'm sorry, Dan. Can you say that again?
Yeah, just some of the takeaways that you had from the report. So Katie kind of touched on kind of those 6 or 7, I believe, that she found. But is there a specific 1 or 2 takeaways that were really kind of that you're going to take away from this report?
Um, yeah, I think again, I think the opportunity lies for me, after reading the report, lies in the fact that these experiences that we offer are only going to become more of a rarity. And how do we make sure we have the right, foundational support to capitalize on that? The challenge I see is, we're already beyond some of the, I mean, AI, we're trying to provide an authentic experience, as Dustin said, without connectivity. Meanwhile, in order to do that, you need to be as connected as possible, and the variance in that is it's kind of authentic versus inauthentic, and it's kind of scary, but it is what it is. I mean, to Dustin's point, right? I mean, we have at our overnight camp now, people are connected, and it's like we threw in the towel. Like there was no, um, it was we weren't into it. We didn't want to do it, but we did it, and it's just the way things are heading. But hopefully that some of that made sense. But there was a lot of takeaways. So, thanks.
Great. Cheyenne, any takeaways for you? Maybe are there maybe related to the Wyoming Outdoor Recreation Business Alliance, or you as a private kind of business owner?
Yeah, so There's both. I think there's a lot that I've talked to with businesses across the state that they want to find a way to interact with each other because they feel like working together could build businesses up, making some sort of connections between industries for support and also just like travel plans so that people feel like they want to stay in the state longer, possibly, which would be an influx for all business owners across the state. We talked with a couple groups about like a travel map plan and different routes you could go. And maybe that would include some of our smaller communities to help build up those businesses that are struggling just for the sheer fact of being farther off the map than the interstates. So that's been a huge factor. And then, yeah, to touch in as someone that runs a few businesses in this area, connectivity is definitely an issue. With the lodge at Half Moon, we finally had to bite the bullet and put Starlink up all the way up through the cabins because we were losing business because people wanted to come, but they had business meetings and different things they needed to attend to. And it wasn't convenient enough to come down to the lodge. And even the lodge internet wasn't great. So we had to upgrade everything, the infrastructure there. But as far as like taking guided trips out through Half Moon and through Camp Grow, we just still are really pushing that disconnecting from electronics and making the most of your time in the mountains. When I guide or take trips out, I have the ability to contact people and have satellite capability. So that's helped keep peace of mind, I think, for people. So I think a lot of it's just finding that balance depending on what the purpose of your adventuring in Wyoming is. Like, is it necessary or is it just because you're addicted to it, and then having those conversations with people. But I think we have a lot to stand up on, and I've talked to business owners that run businesses like mine, and I think we have the ability to help people disconnect, and I don't want to give that up yet. I want to keep fighting for disconnecting and teaching people to just be out in nature, in just nature.
So Lindsay, yeah, thank you, Cheyenne, and Lindsay. You all have like a really a logo that oftentimes is seen around the world. If you're wearing Atmosphere Mountain Works gear, somebody has been to Laramie or lives in Laramie. What are some of the takeaways that you had from this report? Do they relate to marketing? Do they relate to other things that other panelists have said?
Well, I think some of the reporting is a reminder to myself of like there are resources out there. Like we always say that like Wyoming has like a unique access. I mean, like Representative Byron is on this call right now, and that's kind of explanatory of like how many resources we have access to. The fact that if I'm upset or complaining about anything, I just need to like find whatever access we have in Wyoming to that appropriate resource. And something, like my own specific, I reach out to our Main Street Alliance here and use them as kind of the collective voice for downtown Laramie. But I don't know if it's as focused on outdoor recreation, but that's kind of on me as trying to like promote within our own community of how our access to recreation, I think. But I don't know. And for social media and stuff like that, it's just a reminder of like things that we should be doing, and I feel like I know it, but I just need to do it more than anything.
Well, if it drives business, right?
Yeah, exactly.
If you're just doing it for the fun of it, I'm sure that you could do that. But if it doesn't actually result in a positive ROI, then yeah, maybe kind of figure that part out. But doing it in a way that's that's going to draw attention or attract business or raise awareness, those types of things seem like it's great.
Can I just say one other thing? I think this is applicable to my business, but then everybody else's too, is like what makes you unique and different? Like what makes an outfitter unique in Wyoming? Like what I think that kind of seems like the opportunity of like a report like this of that there hasn't been information And we as business owners just need to kind of tell that story to everybody else.
Yeah, that value proposition. What is it
Yeah.
that you're providing that's different or differentiates you? That's a really good observation. And have you taken time to kind of sit down and really make sure that that's communicated with your audience, right? I mean, if it's not communicated, right, man, when I pick up the Wyoga's uh, brochure, for example, Dustin, yeah, everybody who's promoting their business in there, it's like, man, there's some big, there's some big animals in there, and you can clearly see the value proposition for each business is trying to share. Representative Byron, yeah, what takeaways that you had? Um, yeah, either could relate to your role in the legislature or TRW or just private businesses. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, Dan, thank you. I think and everyone's kind of mentioned this to an extent, and obviously the report in today's presentation, Carter mentioned it, that the alliance in Maine that exists, and you just mentioned an acronym, WYOGA, and then we all obviously know what WYORBA is. So stick with me with acronyms; they're tough, but I think I wrote down as kind of we talked today, and I listened to my colleagues and friends on this call. The idea of this information getting out to the limited statewide advocacy groups we have that are in the outdoor rec space. I look at other committees I've sat on or other work I do in Cheyenne, and obviously industry. When I talk about industry, legacy industries, they have tons of lobbying, tons of associations, tons of money getting spent to promote what they do, how they support the state, where we get some of those revenues for. And I think that our number two economy, which is this exact conversation and exactly what the presentation was on, travel, tourism, recreation, guiding, public land use, all of those things under one umbrella. We have some advocacy groups that are down there working on policy, and certainly in the hunting space, we have a lot of them in conservation space. But in terms of I think business and driving that economy, and that's so important to the state, they're just starting to kind of pop up and be more relevant in Cheyenne. So I was glad Carter mentioned that he had spent some time with those folks in Maine, and I think just touching on that, and having folks on this on the webinar and those that will listen to in the future, like Lindsay just mentioned, she engaged her downtown Laramie Coalition, and I think that just getting out the word of how important all these different businesses, whether or not it's guiding, brick and mortar, or support industries, how important those are foundationally to this number two economy in our state. And I think that's a great message that needs to get out to, obviously I wear a hat at the state level, but also our local electeds, and our town council, our county commissions. And I think it's really important to not forget about them when you're trying to promote your industry or promote your business, and how policy could affect how that business goes.
Great. Thanks. Okay, we just want to remind those who are joining us to please submit your Q&A. I've got several questions here for our panel, and also this is the part where we're going to kind of open it up for Q&A. So I'd love to have Carter, Katie, and Inhao join us as well for this, in case we have questions that you guys might be able to answer for us as well. But the first question that's in the Q&A here, when it comes to hiring challenges, how often are you seeing management entities seeking training and resources for making their workplace feel more healthy and supportive of employees? Does anybody want to take that one? Does anybody feel like they're...
I will just say that in
Yeah.
doing interviews, I did not hear too much come up about the challenge specifically of providing better workplaces for employees, with the exception of a couple times. In one instance, I heard a gentleman who is managing a retail store talk about wanting more guidance on how to be a good manager and good leader for his employees. The other time that I heard it was another retail store. They talked about the importance of paying their employees good wages. And they made the recommendation that there be a statewide wage study so that businesses across the state could be aware of what people are being paid and how much they should be being paid in an effort, I think, to increase the wages of outdoor employees.
Yeah, I've also from at the Wyoming Hospitality and Travel Coalition, some of their meetings, we've also heard from business owners who've been changing their business practices to, for example, in the restaurant industry, there being John Johnson who owns a whole slew of restaurants across the state of Wyoming, has really been kind of working to increase benefits and support for his employees. So offering more benefits, but also not only like pay, but also other benefits, in terms of adding meals or being a little bit more flexible with scheduling and those types of things. And it's been he's really adapted a lot of his hiring practices and his employment practices. And he's seeing incredibly good results from that for retention of employees. Because you and Hal and Katie, you guys both mentioned that, the hiring issues are a big one. And Dustin, you mentioned the seasonality part. So, how do you how do you attract and then retain those employees once you get them? I mean, Dustin, are there things that you guys are doing to really retain those employees after you get them? I mean, what are the things that your incentives or things that have been working?
I mean, it is almost impossible to keep them for more than 5 years. So about the time you train them very well to do that job, then either they will get an offer from someone who can provide year-round housing, year-round employment, year-round, et cetera. So we have tried just about everything to include, instead of paying a guide, to make them a year-round salaried employee with housing, but at a lower monthly level than it would be across, through the busy season. And none of it, I'm not saying that certainly there's got to be a good way to do it, but we have not found one. And so the lifespan of a good employee is, I would say, 5 to 8 years at the most. And then they either get married or decide to get a real job, something like that. So I don't know if that helps, but that's my answer.
No, that's great. That is really helpful.
Dan, if I could just add one thing, one other challenge really quickly that we did hear related to this is how difficult it is to afford health insurance for employees, particularly in Wyoming, where it sounds like major trauma centers are pretty far away and could require a helicopter evacuation. And so that is one challenge that we heard related to the health and wellness of employees.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's great. Well, we're getting pretty close to the end here. Is there just kind of looking around Hollywood Squares here? Any last closing thought that any of you all would like to kind of leave us with here?
Dan, if I might, one other thing that I would encourage from the UW perspective as you start down this pathway of studying this stuff, when it comes to policy, and I really appreciate Representative Byron. He has been an incredible asset to outfitters, guides in general, whether it's fishing, hunting, whatever. But there are resources out there in the form of humans who have done it for 40 years. And instead, there's no need to reinvent that wheel. So I would suggest that you reach out to people with experience in the permitting process, which is something that we have done personally with other folks navigating specifically Forest Service permits. But I'm saying across the board, there are people who have the experience. So you don't need to do a bunch of research in how a BLM permit works. Call someone who already knows. And so that's one of my things that I would just encourage as you guys move forward.
Absolutely. I think that's a great thing to end on here, just because, we absolutely would be looking to try to meet many of these needs that have been kind of mentioned related to marketing, and we'll obviously, things with obtaining permits, and we're definitely not going to reinvent any wheels, and really lean on those of you who are experts in this area to share stories and help provide guidance to especially those new and emerging business owners. So, well, I want to end here then today by just saying it's all the time we have, and thank Enhow and Katie and Carter and all our panelists, Representative Byron, Lindsay, Cheyenne, Mike, Dustin, for really great, thoughtful conversation. Just a reminder that the full report is available on our website, and the recording will be shared with all registrants. And we really hope that this becomes a foundational resource for the industry and for this state. And just to mention that this conversation I would like to say, is really just the beginning. And we hope to continue to build on this going forward. So thanks, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.